We've got a cool way for you to measure your fish and give your fishing rod a custom makeover in the process. We'll show you how to do it. Stick with us. What's up, everybody? Today we are going to show you how to install our RodTogs Tall Togs from N1 Outdoors. Now, the Tall Tog, as you see right here, is different than our standard RodTogs, and you can see a few of those right here, just some of the fish patterns and some of the other decorative patterns we have. The Tall Tog is different because obviously it is tall, but the other thing about it is it not only allows you to customize your fishing rod and give it a great custom look with one of the many designs or fish scale patterns, but it also gives you a way to measure your fish so that you don't have to be fumbling around for a tape measure or anything like that while you're fishing. So we'll get started and show you how to do this. Now, before you start, a few things that you're going to want to have. You're going to want to have a Sharpie or a marker of some kind, either an X-Acto knife or a blade, and a straight edge or two. It will help to have a longer straight edge, something in the area of maybe 18 to 24 inches like you see here. It's a little bit easier to work with if you have a larger straight edge. It's not mandatory that you have some painter's tape like this, but it can make the process a little bit better or easier to work with so that you can easily work with this decal without having to move around all over the place. So now that we've got our Tall Togs fastened to the table, we are going to work on making our markings before we do anything else. And so we're going to take a bait caster rod like you see here, just a plain old bait caster, and we're going to wrap it with the Tall Togs. But the first thing we're going to do is we're going to have to measure. So you want to be sure that the website end of your Tall Tog, you'll see RodTogs.com down here, where you can get any of our RodTogs fishing rod wrap products. That's going to go down toward the handle, and the 32-inch end will be going out toward the rod tip. So what we're going to do is we're going to line that up right with the end of the rod right here so that we are just even with the end of the rod as well as the end of the wrap. And now what you have is you have a visual. You have the handle space right here, which we will be applying the RodTogs to, or the Tall Tog. And then you have from this area here out to the 32-inch mark, which is right about where this rod guide or eyelet starts. So right where that taper ends right here. So we will not quite get to the 32-inch mark on here, but that's kind of going to give you an idea of where you're going to see the Tall Tog pattern. So what we're going to do, it's pretty simple, is we're going to take the Sharpie and we're just going to make sure again that the end is lined up properly with the bottom of the Tall Tog here. And what we're going to do is we're just going to make a mark. You can ballpark this, or you can try to get it as exact as you can, but we're just going to make a mark right here, and we're going to make another mark at the top right here. And what we're going to do is, it's probably even hard to see on camera here, but these are our two marks, and we're going to eventually use those to make our cut lines. So we're going to make one there because that's where the portion of the handle starts where we can apply this decal. And then we're going to make another line at the bottom of this other taper that you see right here. It is important that you stay inside of these tapered areas because they have a buildup which will have an upward slope, and if you try to wrap those areas, you're not going to get a good solid wrinkle-free application of the Tall Togs. You want it only on flat surfaces, and so just make sure you keep that in mind. Don't try to wrap over these buildup areas. You will see we're going to do the same thing. Again, making sure that our rod stays lined up at the bottom, but right about here, you can see we're going to make another mark. So there's our mark there. And now we're going to go out over here to this last rod guide. That's where we're going to stop. So now I'm going to make this last mark here. Now, this is probably a good time to say the TallTogs will fit just about any fishing rod, but depending on the rod is what dictates how much of the measured area is going to be showing. So right here, we're going to see from the 17-inch mark, and that's going to be a true 17 inches. So we're going to see at the 17-inch mark all the way out to 32. We don't really need to know what these measurements are down here, which is why they're not on here. We wanted to leave a clear area for you to be able to just showcase the fish pattern or whatever design pattern that you choose. But it will fit just about any fishing rod. The only rods you may have a little bit of an issue with are ultralight tackle rods, which more than likely on an ultralight tackle rod, you're probably not going to be measuring quite as many fish as you would with like a saltwater rod or a worm rod or a bait caster like this. So, okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to take a cutting pad material like this, like you see here, and you can get these just about anywhere, and we may even leave a link in the description below where you can go straight to Amazon or somewhere like that where you can buy one of those. But we're going to take this and we're just going to slide it underneath our tall tog here. So we're going to move this rod out of the way here for a minute. You can see where my cut lines are right here. I'm just going to place the pad under there so that I don't cut through the wood. And I'm going to take my straight edge. I'll take my smaller straight edge right here. And I am going to make my cuts. Now I'm going to slide my pad down to the back here. And I'm going to cut that last cut right here. Now, once I do that, go ahead and separate these. And forgot, I've got one more cut down here I need to make. So I'm going to slide this under here. So as you can see, this portion is going to be applied here. This portion will go away, as will this bottom portion. And then this portion right here will be applied right here. So when we're done, you're going to have the rod that has this section covered and this section right here. Now, this next step is really important. And so to make sure that we get proper adhesion of this tall tog to the rod, we do need to make sure that we get any residue or dirt off of the rod surface. And so some people will use, acetone in cases like this, which you can do, but you're probably also gonna, damage the paint on your rod. Of course, if you're covering it, it may not work, may not matter. But what we like to do is we like to use one of these cloths. This is actually a cloth that we make and sell on our website for our arrow wrap applications, but it works just as well for the fishing rods. And what's cool about it is it doesn't take any chemicals to use this. So it's a special lint-free material that all you have to do is just add water to it. So I've added a little water, and then we'll just take our surface and clean that. You can hear my dog barking upstairs. So then we're going to do the same thing to this part of the rod. Now, once we've got the surface of our rod cleaned, we can start working on the application. But before we do that, a very important part, especially this area up here. So as you can tell, and as you're probably familiar with fishing rods, there's going to be a slight taper from this portion of the rod to here. That means if you just try to apply the rod wrap just like it is, you can do that, but it won't line up exactly right, and you could have some wrinkles. And so, well, we don't want to do that. So down here, it's not so much an issue. We can go ahead and apply this whenever we're ready. But this part up here, we actually need to make some other marks. But we also want to show you what we want to do before we apply it, because we want to make sure that we get the best fit possible. And to do that, we want to measure the circumference of the different parts of the rod. So we'll show you how we do that. Now, while you don't have to have the painter's tape that we mentioned to hold your wrap down necessarily, it is really helpful to have this tape or even a masking tape that you can use for this step, because what we're going to do here is we want to measure the distance around these parts of the rod so that we can know how wide to cut this wrap, because what we don't want is a bunch of overlap. If you get a bunch of overlap, you know, it's not going to be the cleanest application. You might be covering up parts of the design that you want to show. And so we're going to measure, and we'll show you how we do that. So we're going to take a piece here, and we're just going to wrap it around the rod. Now, you'll see I am touching the rod where I just cleaned it. That's important because I'm going to have to clean it again once we get ready to apply it. But just wanted to throw that out there, that anytime you touch that rod after you clean it, you need to go ahead and clean it again to make sure that you get the best adhesion possible. So now, this end is not tapered, so technically we don't really need to do both areas here, but we're going to do that anyway. We'll go ahead and do the same thing down here. And then we're going to make a little mark right here, and I'll tell you why in a minute. And then lastly, we want to put a piece of tape right up here at the very end. That's as far as our wrap is going to reach right there. And I'm going to do the same thing there. I'm going to put a little mark at the furthest most part right here, and at the furthest most part of this section as well right here. And we'll show you that here in a minute. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just make a little cut right here on each of these pieces of tape, and I'm going to peel those off, and I'll show you why in just a minute. Once I take that tape off, that really tells me how wide the wrap needs to be so that the wrap will make it all the way around that handle portion. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put that on there as centered as I can to the center of the wrap. And then I'll do the same thing over here. This is the width of our wrap. But now at this point, what you want to do is you want to connect with your straight edge those 2 points. And that's going to be the outer edge of your wrap. So I would recommend going you want a little bit of an overlap. If you have a little bit of an overlap, then it tends to adhere better. Because in case you have some type of residue on your rod surface and you only make it barely all the way around, that can start to peel up. So what we're going to do is we're going to go just outside of the edge of the tape. We're going to give ourselves like a 1/16 of an inch overlap right there. And we're going to just connect it with our straight edge, and we're going to cut right there. And we're going to do the same thing up here. That's our section for the handle. We're going to do the same thing for this other section of the rod. And this is where the tapered part is so critical. And this is going to be the section that we apply right here. So we're going to go ahead and make our cut. Now, this is where the mark is important. You can see what's left over of the mark on this end. The reason I did that is because this end is the thickest part of this tapered piece. And so I want to make sure when we're connecting our lines here in a minute that I'm connecting those 2 parts. So I'm going to put those 2 parts at the end. And again, I'm going to center this the best I can because I know that inside the cut lines is the part that's going to be showing on the rod. So you can see the black marks here. That's the widest part of the rod that goes right here. On the other one, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to make my cut here. And so now on this part of the rod, this is the skinniest part of the RodTog, and I've got it marked here, and I want that to be on here as well to mark where I have to cut. So this is where having a larger cutting pad is going to be a lot more helpful, because the section on this rod is a little bit longer of a section. This is where that longer straight edge comes in handy. Like we did on the handle portion, we want to create a buffer. So we're going to go out a little further than the edges of these pieces of tape. Just a little bit further. And I'm going to go ahead. I could go ahead and cut this, but since I don't have a cutting pad under here, I'm going to make a line all the way down to the other end. And I'm going to do the same thing on this end. I'm going to leave myself a little buffer just outside the edges of those corners of that tape. Now, it may be a little bit difficult to see, but you can probably tell that there's just a little bit of a taper all the way down, and this is going to come in big when we go to apply this. Now that we've got our lines, I can actually take this tape off. I'm going to turn this diagonally because I can almost get it all the way cut that way. I'm basically going to cut right inside that line I just made. Now we're going to take our sections of RodTogs here and start the application process. I'm going to probably put mine right about here when we apply it. So be about like that. And down here, you kind of see what's going on there. We're going to apply that so that the logo is facing up, just like that. Just to be safe, we're going to clean that rod shaft one more time. Take our Intune Aero Wrap cleaning cloth that I was telling you about, and we're going to go ahead. It's still damp. We're going to go ahead and make sure that surface is clean. We're going to take this and we're going to peel the backing off, and we're going to apply it. It's important to set the middle of the wrap first. So wherever you want to see the center of that logo, which for me, I want the center of that logo right in the middle, and that's where I'm going to start sticking right there. I'm going to work across the middle and then gradually work the edges of that label all the way around. Once you've got the center down, you just want to slowly, do not get in a hurry doing this. You just want to slowly work your way to the edges, and if you see any bubbles, you want to make sure you're getting those bubbles out as you go. Just take it really slow. Now, one little tip right here. We talked about how important a clean rod shaft is. You may want to take that cloth again, a lint-free cloth if that's what you're using, and just clean the very edge of that wrap again. And that's because you want the other side of this wrap to adhere really well to that. So I did that with a wet part. Now I'm gonna use like a dry part of it to just make sure it's dry. And so then I'm doing the same thing on this other side. I'm just slowly working my way around. Eventually, it's going to overlap, just like you see there. So, Now you can see we've got our wrap applied here. Just make sure you run across that seam really good on the bottom. Handle portion looks pretty good. We're going to move now to the middle section. Same concept over here. Just make sure one more time that our shaft gets good and clean. And we're going to, once again, we're going to see where we want this placement. And just like we did on the handle part, I'm just going to start with the middle. I'm going to make sure everything is nice and tight right here. Now you can see I had a little bit of Sharpie marker still left on that wrap. It actually does not stick or stain these permanently, so you can just go back over it with your cloth and it'll pretty much come off of there. But now I'm going to clean this surface where I'm going to be connecting the wrap here in a second. And I just keep working around just like that. And what you get by doing that taper, those taper cuts and measurements that we did, you get a wrap that fits exactly right to the taper of your rod, whatever it is. So that's a really important step that you want to be sure that you do. Very cool looking version of the RodTogs Tall Tog. You can get all different types of fish on our website at n1outdoors.com. You could also go to rodtogs.com, which will take you right to that page. But we are sure glad that you have joined us on this video. Be sure to like and subscribe to our channel as well. Helps us keep the channel going. We hope you have a great week. And remember, where the moments happen, we'll meet you there. We'll see you next time.